Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for your Commander-in-Chief here in Abbotsford to bring the R.C.M.P into Abbotsford. For the last couple of weeks, I've been a pretty busy man on what has took place. The organized crime that laid in Abbotsford by establishment was unbelievable, held up by leaders of political parties. I want to talk about Ed Fast, the MP, and Mike de Jong, the BC MLA for the Liberals. There's a new thing out in Abbotsford, and Abbotsford's the first to know everything about the political world because they want to get rid of the establishment. Abbotsford is the largest ring of organized crime here through the back doors for job sites and to control the political players in the town. It don't matter if you're liberal, conservative, or nothing. That's a metaphor that out there that it's conservative, and you can see it. So let me give you that. The BC Conservatives are being pressured from behind the scenes by the old Liberals. The Liberals want to take it and revamp the BC Conservatives with John Rustan gone and create the new progressive Conservatives and come back in, putting themselves back in power. That means Mike de Jong wouldn't be too far behind the doors. You can see the establishment can't let go. Abbotsford warned Pierre Poilievre when they stepped in to help Suk Mangill on what Ross Siemens in Abbotsford First was doing. Ross was tied to the Chamber of Commerce that endorsed him over all the other mayors, the illegal stuff. And now Ross looks like he's got to make another turn for the illegal stuff for Henry. So I'll go beside Suk Mangill, I'll get some pictures. He made a shithole statement. Abbotsford built a new police station and got the pumps. Really, Ross, really, a pathetic stuff. The homeless were kicked out behind Walmart, the attack on the South Asians, the flood, and everything else, Henry's son in front of him, the Abbotsford police, and everything that was done, the neglect on our homes by elected officials that are the sworn duty, councillors that were collaborating and everything. It was a group ring. Who put this ring together was Braun, the mayor's own son, the economic development officer, sat in a room and told the story. When I heard that story and learning from developers and everything that I knew through the political ring, I knew it was to control Abbotsford for the official community plan, and how you could control it was through the APD, and you needed them to be your loyal servants. Henry grabbed Mike Sir by the privates, and Mike Sir buckled to Henry Braun, and he controlled manipulation. That is why I argued to remove the Abbotsford police. So they're asking me what is my outcome, and look at it. We got to make sure that we're going to send a message to our conservative friends and to other parties that Abbotsford will not stand for any more bloody cheating, and get rid of them old geezers at the back door, Mike de Jong and everybody that you need. If you're going to run for this leadership and keep the conservatives of the conservatives, you got to make sure that there is no ties to liberals or anybody penetrating your party. We saw who was loading Suk Mangill's EDA. We saw you that Manji Soy went in there and said that he's going to run Patricia Dreesen scamming with Archway to waive its taxes, the money on the flood victims and everything else. When that information came, I took it to the best there ever was that served this great country called Canada, and that was the R.C.M.P mission. Abbotsford residents and myself owe them men a tremendous thanks of what they did to uphold the law and uphold the moral and ethics values for every family member and everybody in Abbotsford. They knew Henry was loading the elections by blocking it with great toes to not allow me to play the stuff Vicky Hopes was doing. I'm adamant, right, of how far we got to push this avenue to have them charged so it sets a clean picture. The attack on Councillor Mogill with the task force was one of the most disgustingest things. And I made sure, thanks to the R.C.M.P, you could see the attack on my life with Henry Braun trying to end it. You could see the Abbotsford police smashing my cameras. I tell you right now, the Abbotsford police are pretty well laid back of what they need to do. Means Watts is kicking them in the teeth, but that ain't good enough. The attack on families, the little kid up in Yale, the abuse on our time cards, the abuse, and it ain't about building a new police station and having more investigators. It's about keeping ties to this community and looking after this community, and they're painting this stupid picture of how much money we can fraud and we need to gut it. They've stole hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtimes, and there was no leadership or responsibility. And we need to change that. So you're asking me why? Why? about the BC Conservatives becoming the Progressive Conservatives, changing their name, and the Liberals are going to take it over. I'm calling for Bruce Banman to call a leadership race to become the Premier and be a true Conservatives, and the true Conservatives get behind him and support him. That would be Rianne Gasper, Corky Neufeld, even though I slammed Corky and them. And that you support him and you get behind him and you do Conservative things. And this is why these parties collapse. This is why Pierre Poilievre can't get a mandate. He can't get elected because his MPs are flip-flopping. You saw Ed Fast go behind Mike de Jong, a Liberal. You saw that because it's their own agendas. It's not about this community. And I knew when Henry was stealing, if we bring forensic audits, it's going to put a stop to a lot of different cities and municipalities. What the provincial and federal MPs and MLAs are doing in this town to get elected. Henry Braun opened the door that there is no going back. But I'm going to tell you this. So why do I stand here and tell you about why I want the Commander-in-Chief removed the R.C.M.P? So there's only two ways you can go in this. You can use violence that ends people's lives, and that I always think of every day, of how many Abbotsford police have lied in front of their court and have framed people and have targets on them and they're being targeted, and this is why they keep their faces shields, their name shields and everything else, and they're not proud of their community. How many dirty, filthy acts have they done with their buddy system out there? How much has went on? The R.C.M.P are held accountable by the politicians, and the politicians watch the R.C.M.P and the R.C.M.P watch the politicians, basically like union and non-union on a job. The Abbotsford police were establishment police, the force. That's what they were. You saw them failing to do protocol, procedures. I put it on world YouTube so their commanders, their investigators could see. Smashing cameras, making false accusations. When the R.C.M.P admission said you go to Mike de Jong and Ed Fast about Henry using the Abbotsford police, it was a former Attorney General, MLA elected piece of garbage that he was, said, you cut a deal, Henry owns Abbotsford. Can you imagine that? Rather than saying, what the hell do you mean that Mike Sir, the police chief, is covering Henry's attempted murder and stealing your signs and block you in the election? Mike didn't, because Mike was in Henry's back pocket. And that is why you saw Henry get everybody, John Van Duggan, George Perry, and everybody in Ed Fast to get behind Mike de Jong, believing if we could get him in over Suk Mengel. But the racist act has to take place. Councillor Mengel never deserved the task force to threaten him and smash his election, and that is policing. So I know them officers are all dirty, we got to remove them. It's kind of like the maintenance people in the hospital going in and saying, well, we can add surgery and do the surgery, we don't need doctors. It's murder. That is murder. And with the Abbotsford police doing what they're doing, blocking protocol and procedures and investigations to help their friends, it's organized crime. And they don't think it is. They thought this is a shit thing. So why I'm adamant about the R.C.M.P? Let me tell you why. This tells you, when the man in the United States seized the oil tankers from Venezuela to bring it back, this is why I want to seize this job site and many more in Abbotsford when Darren Brown showed me. It was organized crime. Let me tell you how that organized crime could play. It was Ron Funk of the Verse that decided to take his superintendents and his staff into Dave Sadu, the Capritra's newspaper's office, who's a sitting counsel, and he wanted to be held accountable when his dad called him out about it, and get Ross Siemens elected. They were all called Abbotsford First. And then Ron Funk in return had the zoning changed here without going to the community plan from 200 to 455 to benefit Ron Funk. This is why you don't see Vicky Hopes mentioned in the newspaper. This is why you don't see Brad Viss stand here and say, oh, what a great thing, 400 new units, because it was all done illegal. But this wasn't the only site that was done illegal. It was been threats. It wasn't just taking a little bit to get a little bit more lunch money. It was organized crime. It put the homeless in jeopardy. It allowed taxpayers to go on the hook for millions of dollars in rocks down Gladys Avenue. It allowed infractions that were never caught by the city bylaws or anything here in Abbotsford, because it was a friend system going on. Then it didn't just spread there. The Mackenzie Bog, which people got deadly sick, which because it's establishment friend, wasn't shut down. The city didn't do proper procedure. Peter Sparanese figured, well, I'm just going to deflect, and Magnus going to deflect. The city lawyer has an actual duty as lawyer to protect the city from negligence and lawsuits that increases the city's insurance, and he didn't do it. Figuring if we threaten the residents like they did the farmers, they won't get together and sue the city. It has to come to an end because it was establishment when it was getting rich. When Darren Braun showed me the Cooper's Farm zoning changing, that Henry took it off the dockets, then ran it through the dockets, and he had Vicky Hope's right. There was very few people that showed up at the city hall when the city hall was compact. The city staff even gave me their time cards showing that they had to do double overtime because they had to go from the city on Monday to Monday night to work the city auditorium doors because there was so much. It was organized crime. And what was that organized crime benefiting? What was it for? It was this: money, the attacks on people's life and everything. But it had our Abbotsford top of police that figured, now if we don't take pictures with Henry Braun and we distance ourselves and we try to rebuild the team, you can't rebuild. You can't. You got to wipe out. You got to come with new people, and you got to show examples of what took place. You can't have them going before the courts. They're a bunch of garbage. They're liars. They attack their own community. They beat residents. They failed to take reports to protect their friends and their establishment, which is unheard of. Abbotsford owes the R.C.M.P a tremendous thanks for saying, stay with it, stay with it. But this is what it was about: organized criminal elite ring. And when the Abbotsford residents went to Ed Fast about it, Ed couldn't do nothing but just sit there with his bloody mouth shut. And I guess wind of Pierre Poilievre finding out to kick Ed out of the party finally. And over all of everything, he selected Superman Gale for the riding to become the MP over Mike DeYoung. And you saw the push with Simon Gibson and everybody else. Pierre Poilievre knew that Devin Roy, Ed's son-in-law, is tied. Pacific Peak Homes is tied to who? Ron Funkadiverse. It's Abbotsford City knew the attack. The great people that in there knew the attack on my life. Knew the purpose of blocking to load R.C.M.P was for job sites, the Fisher Community Plan, for Henry to get the new West Coast in here, the money for the dikes and everything else. It was Abbotsford residents knew when I went to the R.C.M.P there was no way the Abbotsford police was going to have control of the files or anything. It was people like this. I want to show you. Police Chief Secretary Donna Mason that stood, when people stood in the middle of the winter freezing, with a coward Mike Sir, the captain of the Abbotsford police, hid upstairs shaking like a little bitch. No, pardon my language, a little bloody coward bitch. Upstairs shaking, when his police officers, Keelan Olenoff, made an open threat to help Henry Braun. You drop the lawsuit and the videos of Henry having councils collaborating in his house, or I will personally bury you. It called for Abbotsford, for the Abbotsford police, who had anything to do with protocol and procedures, to call the Police Complaints Commission now and have an investigation and have them, Police Complaints Commission or the R.C.M.P, talk to the witnesses and everybody that heard Olenoff do it. It didn't do it. They were that far tied behind the doors between the politicians. Figuring the Abbotsford police need to stay in power. This is why I'm adamant about removing them, because this wasn't just about adding an extra room to your house because you're having a baby or you're getting a grandkid and you need to add more and it's economic times or so. This was about open mob theft of using the city bank account, the city's taxpayers, and blocking actual residents for their gain. And it was a little ring. Henry Braun went in the city. Darren Braun, his son was taking me and showing me. He went in the city. He needed to remove Bruce because Bruce wouldn't go under his thumb, because Bruce was a smarter man, knowing that this stuff will get you caught. And Bruce was a servant for the people and not for Henry. Then he knew he needed the scandal mo. And Henry was in the driver's seat, Darren Braun showed you. Former Rick Rates, who ran this old facility, which was the Abbotsford News, was the pro editor, was Henry's friend. And then showed through Tyler Olson how Henry said to the Abbotsford News, you write one thing bad about me, I'll put you on your belly. Then he showed how Vicky Hopes could control it. Then he showed me that Greg Toes, the Chamber of Commerce, how the city people that need to run for mayor will get the questions and everything else to debate, and that other candidates will get blocked. He showed how Henry was using city electoral officer Gabriel to go down and get the signs of all the other candidates and create pressure. He showed how Vicky Hopes wouldn't run any ads for your mayorship. He showed how Dave Sidhu of the Capritra newspaper who was a city council, would block so the East Indians didn't see. It was Andy Sadu said my shithole garbage son did that for Ross. He showed them how they were going to do at UFB, threaten for the debates, blocking a democracy, democratic process. Why do we fight for that? It's the only way for pure justice and for somebody to get caught when they're as big and corrupt as Henry Braun owning the police department. Freedom of speech must be protected no matter if you're looked at as you're an asshole, like the Abbotsford police say to me all the time. Oh, you're a bloody retard. You're a retard. But I didn't get caught stealing. I didn't get caught loading my time cards. I didn't get caught pricking up a hooker. I didn't get caught stealing gas out of the cars. I didn't get caught jumping on police vehicles. I didn't get caught taking my masks out of my filters out of my mask at the hospital. I didn't get caught covering up for the illegal party at Mike DeYoung to endorse Dave Sadu. I didn't get caught in inflating my time cards on the CP track. I didn't get caught of throwing a lavish party on Canada Day on taxpayers' dollars. I didn't get caught on none of that. It was the Abbotsford men and women that did it, because under uniform we never get questioned, because we're going to only answer to Henry, and Henry was using us for leniency. They frauded thousands of dollars on taxpayers. And then they wanted the 70 or 81 million for the Abbotsford police building to give to Unitech that wasn't going to tendering the jobs. Frauding. Look, they were in the driver's seat. Nobody was paying attention. It was like you got an inheritance. This is why I argued the R.C.M.P. Things changed for Abbotsford the day I took Abbotsford residents and myself and we went to the R.C.M.P. when Darren Braun elaborated that his uncle Irwin was on the police foundation and how Henry had the Abbotsford police, Keelan Olenoff's threats, and Mike Sir. Things changed when we went to the R.C.M.P. because the Abbotsford police didn't have the evidence, they couldn't control, they couldn't bullshit and say, well, we're going to look into it and stall it. It was the facts were on the ground, and the facts were they failed to do reports, they failed to go out there, and if they did it here at the political level, they're doing it all over for richer people through Abbotsford, and that is why I argue. Under the R.C.M.P., this is preferential treatment, it's insider trading, and it's also tax. It's fraud. It's just absolutely fraud that you use the city bank account to originate yourself and change the zonings. So this is why I stand here. Abbotsford knows with what they're hearing and paying attention to the political world, and we owe a lot of people. I told you Bill Vanderzam, we went to Terry Beach of the Liberals, we went to the NDP. We had a lot of people even know that I tell you I'm a conservative, came in to do what was right for Abbotsford and fight this with Abbotsford and stand beside me. And why? Was because they're protecting the Abbotsford the freedom, their rights and everything else, and they knew it was organized crime. That's why it didn't take any brains to figure it out. But we have to demolish at all terms the Abbotsford APD. It must be taken to the ground and it must be reconstructed that the R.C.M.P. take over Abbotsford. The elites are trying to hold it on. You can see Ross will slowly manipulate now as he looks like he's going to make a ditch effort for the mob leader one more time for his mayor term to keep the official community plan going. And you can see him, he'll trick Suk Mangill in to get pictures. They're going to start promoting all the good things they did, built the police station for more evidence, and the facts of the matter is, it took legwork, it took honest, hard people, and it took the ability to put the law first, and what wasn't done by the Abbotsford police. We don't need a bloody investigators here. We don't need Colin Watts' shit here. He can go with Alex Mitchell and take little pictures. I told him before and I'll tell him again, he needs the same as Pierre Poilievre that doesn't got a plan. They just don't got a plan. You know, they don't got of how to get the economy going, build the homes, all this stuff. He doesn't got official plan. You need to go and tell George Clooney to get out of Hollywood, and that's where you need to go. You need to put your residents and your citizens first. And I want to elaborate one thing. Abbotsford is going to emphasize as we always go forward through this fight for my leadership and command in Abbotsford to bribe the R.C.M.P. in here and kick them spoiled shit out of Abbotsford. I don't care what degrees they got and what they did. It was organized crime and it should have never been looked away from. And that is why I went to the world social media on Facebook so the Abbotsford police can sit in their videos and watch it online and never deny that it was in front of their faces and they failed to come out and do what was right. They failed it. They failed it. And why you only protect and fail is because you're being paid off for this, for money, for money, for money, for absolute money. But I want to emphasize The two men that were running this from the backside was MP Ed Fast and Mike Dion. But Henry Braun was the mastermind, the ringleader of the mob, and set it up. And you could see the protection they gave Henry Braun so they wouldn't investigate him, didn't talk to witnesses on his hit and run, and protected him because he controlled that much elite power in Abbotsford. And now you could see they're distancing themselves by Henry Braun. You could see even Ross wouldn't even stand and haul Henry in, the expert. Remember the expert? He came back as mayor when he was no longer the mayor to speak about the flood to get that money for them gravel pits. This was outright organized crime. And the same as the Venezuela oil tanker that was seized and took it to the United States. This has got to be seized because it led not just here. I want to make you understand. It wasn't just here. It led to unfairness by bureaucrats through the back door of the city managers and city people that were Henry's bitches. The Polygon, Henry Braun took it off the dockets and put it on and said it was Peter Speranese. And as mayor, I would order the R.C.M.P to charge Peter Speranese for working with developers over the general community rather than kick it back. It wasn't just this site. The marketing of Ron Funk's coming first on the Vaquero Ranch and all these other things. The Mackenzie Bog I mentioned was all that, the Gladys, on Gladys Avenue, all the rocks on taxpayers' dollars and frauds. And for example, I want to tell you this. The city has an obligation to release its every 3 months, its budget and its official spending budget of what it's done. And Ross hasn't done that. He hasn't released with Peter Speranese in that because he's in turmoil. Because that shows Abbotsford residents of where the money's going and accountability, where you're going and what you're doing with the money and where it's designating into programs. So they haven't released it because they're coming up with this shithole story. Well, you know, here's the plan. Here's the plan. I'm proud to say as mayor, we got 20 new programs with the Abbotsford Police, the outreach to children, the beating, the racing of Dodge Chargers, the illegal attack, and we got 20 new programs that we're going to do. Beating South Asians. We got these programs we're going to teach you. We can get out on community view. We're going to teach you how to go in Yale Secondary, tell little kids that they're not allowed in the parks. Abbotsford Police, men and women have to be put on notice that you got to be fucking dismantled. It was organized crime. As the R.C.M.P put it the best, when they were ringing my house, he said, Mr. Pelican, they're putting what in front of you? And it was logged, all the pictures of everything. He said, if there is an investigation, we do that investigation. So why is the Abbotsford Task Force surrounding your house? Because if you are this great criminal with your residents and all them seniors, we would be leading that investigation and called in. We're not. Because it was a personal favor by a bunch of shithole men that believed uniform, the manipulation of uniform, how we can use Vicky Hopes and how we could play it. And everybody would take sympathy for this. Leaves too much in the opening when you're not doing proper procedure and proper protocol. As I begin this story, I'll end this story. It tells you the same as you go to the hospital and the janitor says, I can do his surgery, his open heart surgery, and you die. It's murder. It's the same thing here as the Abbotsford Police doing what they did is organized crime, and we need to put a stop to it. That is why you don't see Brad Viss saying these 400 units are going to help Abbotsford. That is why you didn't see Ross Siemens. That is why you didn't see Vicky Hopes. That is why you don't even see Mark Workendine, who cheated, and his signs were here when he was in England. That is why you don't even see Patricia Druisen. You don't see none of them advertising about the great Funkstermeister because it was done illegal. It wasn't for houses, it was done illegal. And it's got to be seized like the Venezuelan oil tank, and it must be taken back and put into the city's resources for the cities properly to disperse of it fairly to their taxpayers and lower your taxes. I'm live. Abbotsford, British Columbia, Ron Funk of the Verse.